The alien Princess Leora stood at the edge of the observation deck, her delicate hands resting lightly against the smooth, iridescent railing. The stars beyond stretched endlessly, and yet her mind was crowded with more than the vastness of space. The Council had ordered her to meet the human contingent, a delegation sent to negotiate terms that could affect the fate of her planet. Diplomacy was not unfamiliar to her, yet the thought of standing before a human soldier, one whose reputation preceded him, left her unusually unsettled. Her people, the Ilari, valued composure above all else. Every expression, every gesture, was controlled to reflect calm wisdom. A slip, even momentary, could be interpreted as weakness. Leora had mastered the art of serenity through years of careful training, but today, it seemed a quiet storm threatened to break through her carefully constructed exterior. The door hissed softly, and the human entered. He was tall, though not unreasonably so, with a build that spoke of both endurance and agility. His uniform was simple, functional, and unadorned with unnecessary decorations, yet it somehow conveyed authority without arrogance. He carried himself with the precision of someone accustomed to responsibility, yet his eyes clear, steady, and oddly unflinching revealed a depth of character that Leora had not anticipated. Her first instinct was to mask her surprise. Diplomats rarely impressed her, and soldiers even less. But as he stepped forward, his presence filled the room not with intimidation, but with quiet confidence. She realized, almost reluctantly, that her breath had caught. The human introduced himself simply, "I am Captain Rian," his voice calm and measured, without the usual strain of ceremony. Leora inclined her head slightly, replying with the formal greeting customary among her people. "Princess Leora, your presence honors us," she said, her voice carefully modulated. Rian nodded, his gaze briefly flicking toward the stars before returning to her. There was a steadiness in him that seemed to cut through the carefully maintained decorum of the deck, a quiet honesty that demanded respect rather than demanding it by title or rank. Leora found herself struggling to maintain the composed expression that had served her so well for years. The Council had briefed her extensively about humans, but nothing in their reports could have prepared her for this. They spoke of their courage, their unpredictability, their occasional recklessness. But Leora could feel, even in this first fleeting encounter, that there was more to him than mere bravery. There was a sense of purpose that radiated outward, a clarity of thought that both unnerved and fascinated her. They began their discussion in the formal manner dictated by protocol. Negotiations, though seemingly mundane, were subtle dances of strategy and understanding. Rian's approach was direct yet respectful, each of his points articulated with precision. Leora found herself genuinely intrigued by his perspective, his ability to consider not only his own objectives, but also the implications for her people. Minutes passed, and then hours. Leora felt an unfamiliar tension in her chest. She was accustomed to being the one who inspired awe, the one whose every action was measured and admired. Yet here she was, listening intently, leaning forward slightly as Rian explained the logistical challenges of interplanetary cooperation. He spoke with a quiet intensity, and she realized that she had forgotten to remind herself to maintain her usual stoicism. At one point, he paused and looked directly at her, and Leora was caught off guard. His gaze was neither invasive nor demanding, yet it felt impossibly perceptive. It was as though he could see past the polished exterior, past the carefully constructed mask of royal composure, straight into the thoughts she had tried so hard to conceal. She felt her heart quicken ever so slightly, a sensation she had learned to suppress long ago. Rian noticed, or perhaps he simply continued speaking with natural authenticity. "Your people are remarkable," he said quietly, yet with conviction. "I have not met anyone with such a balanced perspective and such careful consideration for their responsibilities." The compliment should have been expected in diplomacy, But coming from him, it struck differently. It was not flattery. It was recognition, clear and unembellished. Leora found herself momentarily wordless, a rarity she could scarcely tolerate. Her mind, trained for decades to anticipate and respond, stumbled for the first time. As the hours passed, their conversation shifted from formal matters to more personal observations. Rian's demeanor remained unchanged, calm yet engaging. He shared stories of his home, of the challenges his people faced, and of the small victories that kept hope alive. Liara, in turn, found herself sharing details of her own life, not as a princess performing her role, but as someone who genuinely wanted to convey her experiences. In those moments, she recognized something extraordinary. Humans, despite their apparent fragility, possessed a resilience that was both startling and admirable. They faced adversity not merely with skill, but with an unwavering commitment to persevere, to protect what mattered to them. Rian embodied that resilience fully, his presence an unexpected testament to the potential within his species. The sun of Leora's planet began to set, casting long iridescent shadows across the observation deck. The interplay of light and color reflected off her skin in a way that accentuated her natural elegance, and she caught herself wondering if Rian noticed the subtle beauty of her features. The thought startled her. She had never allowed herself the luxury of vanity beyond what was required for her public role. Yet here, in the presence of a human soldier, the possibility of being seen simply as herself, not as a princess, was disconcertingly appealing. Rian seemed unperturbed by the subtle changes in her demeanor. He continued to speak of matters, both practical and philosophical, weaving together ideas of diplomacy, strategy, and ethics with a fluency that suggested he had wrestled with such concepts long before this encounter. Leora found herself drawn not only to his intellect, but to the integrity that underpinned it. A sudden alert flashed across the deck's interface, signaling a minor breach in the outer perimeter. Leora straightened immediately, the princess once more commanding attention. Rian moved with practiced efficiency, assessing the situation calmly, issuing commands without hesitation. In moments, the threat was neutralized, and the deck returned to its quiet state. Yet Leora's composure, though restored outwardly, had been subtly altered. The grace of her movements, the precision of her posture, now carried an awareness of someone beside her who understood courage not as a display, but as a quiet certainty of action. She realized that she had been profoundly affected by the human soldier's presence. As the evening progressed, the formal session drew to a close. Protocol dictated a ceremonial bow, and Leora performed it flawlessly, though her thoughts remained partially entangled with the impression Rian had left. He inclined his head in return, a simple gesture devoid of grandeur, yet it carried weight beyond words. When they stepped out onto the deck together, the stars above seemed brighter, more vivid. Leora could not recall the last time she had felt such a mixture of respect, admiration, and a strange, unnameable curiosity. She knew that the council would soon expect her to maintain a certain distance, to treat the human delegation with measured caution. Yet, in that moment, she found herself wishing that such caution could be momentarily suspended. Rian's eyes met hers briefly, and he gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. It was not one of flirtation or condescension, but of acknowledgement or recognition that despite differences in species, rank, and origin, there existed a shared understanding. Leora felt her heart respond in kind, a quiet resonance that she could neither control nor fully explain. Returning to her private quarters, Leora could not shake the feeling of being unsettled in the most intriguing way. Her reflection in the crystalline surface of the room's walls showed the practiced serenity she was expected to display. Yet her mind replayed every gesture, every word, every subtle glance shared with Rian. The human soldier had done something no diplomat, no advisor, No council member had ever managed. He had rendered her genuinely wordless. The days that followed were filled with continued negotiations and formal meetings. Yet Leora's perspective had shifted. She observed Rian not only as a soldier or a representative of his people, but as an individual whose presence challenged her assumptions and expanded her understanding. His actions in small moments, the way he treated his subordinates with fairness, the patience he exhibited in tense discussions, the quiet confidence that never demanded attention, yet always commanded it, left her both humbled and inspired. Her advisors noted a subtle change in her demeanor. Leora appeared more thoughtful, less constrained by the rigid expectations of her role. She continued to perform her duties with precision, yet there was a spark in her expression, a willingness to engage more deeply with ideas rather than merely respond to them. The human soldier had sparked something within her that transcended protocol or politics, a recognition of the profound potential of humanity, and perhaps a recognition of something in herself she had not fully acknowledged. One evening, as the two walked across the terrace overlooking the bioluminescent gardens of her palace, Rian spoke quietly. "Your people have a remarkable sense of balance," he said. "I have met many leaders, but few carry both wisdom and humility in equal measure. Leora S.